Hi, I'm Seth, and welcome to Thrift Store Tech. In our last video, we talked about the Bondwell B200 laptop from 1990, and you may remember I pointed out something special on the back output panel. And we have a 9-pin RGB out port. That means that this little guy can actually output CGA video. Today we'll be taking a look at those CGA capabilities. Sort of. See, a 9-pin CGA monitor is not something that I was ever expecting to really stumble upon, at least not at a price I was willing to pay. As you know, this show is called Thrift Store Tech, and what can I say? I work with the thrift store budget. In other words, I'm cheap. I kept one eye open without really expecting to find much until one day I got particularly lucky at my Goodwill Clearance Center and found this. This is a Compaq Desk Pro DSM monitor, and it does indeed display graphics in CGA mode, although it does it in amber monochrome. For a closer look at this beast, let's go to the bench. This Compaq Desk Pro DSM monitor actually dates back to January of 1986, making it 4 years older than the Bondwell. The back of the monitor is not terribly interesting to look at, but if we do take a look at the badge on the back, we can see that it was made by Compaq Computer Corporation, Houston, Texas, USA, and the model is Compaq Desk Pro DSM. Voltage rating is 12 volts, current rating is 2 amps. Intended only for connection to a Compaq Desk Pro. So this guy was only supposed to ever really be paired with a certain desktop computer, the Compaq Desk Pro. And what's interesting is that when I actually got this, there was another cable coming out of the back here that just ended in a DIN plug that would have plugged into the computer. And that actually provided the power and told the monitor when to turn on and off. Well, of course, I don't have that, and I really wanted to make this usable for myself. So what I did instead was a slight modification. I added a power jack that I can use with a 12 volt 2 amp power supply. I added a simple toggle switch. I thought about adding it in the front, but I really didn't want to disturb the front of it too much because I really love how the front looks. If we take a look at the front of the monitor, we can see its beige housing, its brown bezel, its badge that reads Compaq Desk Pro, and one single knob that does not control power, but just controls the brightness of the monitor. And just because I know some people might want to see it, let's take the top off and take a look inside. Now, getting into the back of the monitor is not difficult at all. It's only 2 small Phillips head screws, which I'll just sit over to the side. And then it's just a lift and pull back on the monitor casing. But before I do that, I of course want to emphasize that this is not connected to any power. You should never open electronics to work on them with the power connected. It's very dangerous and very risky. Also, just a note that I have worked on some CRTs before. I am far from an expert and I'm not really going to be able to identify a lot of the parts that are in there. But I do know that CRT monitors can carry very lethal voltages and must be treated with a lot of caution. So, please don't do this at home if you don't know what you're doing. Taking a look down in here, we have our CRT, we have all of our circuitry for everything. Like I said, hardly an expert. I can't really elaborate on exactly what parts are what. But what I can show you in a little more detail is down here, the mod that I did. Now this is all that remains of the DIN cable that I mentioned before, the one that was coming out the back through this notch here. You can see on the inside chassis there was a hole here for it to pass through that had a grommet. That grommet gave me a heck of a fight getting it out. It did not want to give it up, which just speaks to how well it was built, I suppose. All I really did was trim it short and strip it out a little bit so that I could expose the wires for the power supply to feed directly into there. Wired it through to the toggle switch down here, if you can see, so that all I have to do to turn it on or off is up for on, down for off. I was really surprised by just how much open space there was in here, relatively speaking. It was really nice to see that much space to work with. Well, now that we've seen the insides, let's close it up, being safe, and then let's go take a look at how it actually performs. Okay, we are here in my office. I've connected the Bondwell to the monitor. I'm just going to reach behind and turn this on. And of course down here we have our power light for the Bondwell. And I'm going to just turn this on and let it come up. And if you'll remember, as it does its post-test, it will eventually beep and ask us if we want to use the LCD or the CRT screen. I just have to hit F2 to toggle the CRT display. And there it is. And there we are on the main screen. Now I just want to say something quickly about this screen, is that CRTs are not always the most easy things to film. They tend to be out of sync with the camera shutter exposure speed, or they're just very hard to focus on. My phone is actually doing a pretty good job of it right now, but through some experimentation I did find out that my regular camera actually does a better job of filming it, so that's what we'll be using for the remainder of the video. The funny thing to point out is that this required the camera to have its massive zoom lens on. This is set up less than 5 feet away from the monitor, and it gives a much clearer picture than the typical standard lens. So we are going to get started with that. Okay, we are now up at our DOS prompt, and I'm just going to go ahead and go through those little standard things. If you remember from the Bondwell episode, we did go through a few games and demoed them out on the LCD screen, which was not really the best way to look at those games. So we're going to be looking at a few different games again this time, and we're going to start off with those just so you have a comparison reference. Miss Pac-Man, let's let that come up here on the amber monochrome, and I think it's actually going to look pretty good. Hey, here we go. And keep in mind, this is something I forgot to mention in the Bondwell episode, all the sounds for any of these games just come from a simple little speaker inside the Bondwell. It is just like a IBM PC desktop beeper. It is hardly any sound. Now, of course, we don't have this in color, so it is a little harder to tell when those ghosts can be eaten and when they can't. You do have to go strictly by the sound effects, but I think it looks tremendous on here, even being in just that monochrome color. I actually wouldn't mind trying this out. Whoops. I actually wouldn't mind trying this out on a green monochrome monitor sometime if I ever come across one. And as you can see, I can actually do much better at Miss Pac-Man when I'm not trying to play it through a viewfinder, he said as he died. Here we are in Frogger, a game that would look pretty good on a green monochrome monitor, I think. And I keep dying. And I got one in there. And as I mentioned before, this does actually save my high scores to the disc. You'll see here was my previous one. Very poor attempt at playing through the viewfinder. But here we have this one, and it will save it to the floppy disk, so this will be there next time, presumably until it's overwritten by a higher score. And here we are in Tetris. I spared you the weight of sitting through the loading screen, but as you can see, this looks much crisper and much clearer than it did going through that LCD screen. Something that makes this a little challenging to do with the keyboard is that the arrow keys do control your direction, but it's the shift key that rotates your piece, and it's very easy to accidentally press the up key instead of the shift key, which does this. And the first time I saw this, I thought all it did was change the backgrounds. But as it turns out, this actually increases what level you're on. Because as you can see, the pieces are falling much faster than they were now. In fact, so fast that I doubt I'm going to be able to keep up for very long. Oh, yep, I'm dead. And something you'll notice here on the top 10 Comrades screen is that everything is jumbled, which is very odd because this does display correctly when it's seen on the LCD screen on the Bondwell. So, to my knowledge, this is the only game that actually does that and has a jumbled up screen. I don't know exactly why it does it, but I'm glad it does it here and not through the rest of the game. And just to move on from arcade into some more classic DOS games that some of you may remember from back in the day. First one that we have coming up now and loading is Alley Cat from 1984. One of the very early games that shipped with some very early IBM PCs. And no, we don't have a joystick, and we're going to go with Kitten because I'm not great at this game. But here's our cat in the corner of the screen, jumping up. And if that dog comes along and catches you, it's game over for that life. Thankfully, the game is a little forgiving on if you miss hitting the line and just fall to the ground like that, or if a mouse knocks you off the line, because it does not actually take away a life. That, however, does. This is a game that I had actually never heard of before I got my hands on the Bondwell and then on this monitor while looking for other games to check out. And I have to say, I really enjoy this game. I find it to be an awful lot of fun. And I'm into the big cheese room. Okay, anyone who may have played this game knows that there are certain objectives to each room. This particular one has this gigantic cheese that is full of mice that I'm trying to catch. I'm trying to catch all of them. The broom that's bouncing around can't really hurt me, but it can inconvenience me because it can knock me all over the place. And if I catch all the mice in the room in a certain amount of time, it gives me those extra points for that. This is one trying to make my way up to the top of all of these hearts to try to get to my little love interest cat up there. And unfortunately, apparently all these other suitors want to get at her too. But, ooh, and I'm out the window. Did not make it up there, so my cat got mad. But let's jump into this other one. This is another room I particularly enjoy, because this one involves getting up onto that table that you see on the right and into the fish tank to eat as many fish as I can. And my little squiggly lines here are electric eels because this person is ridiculous. To a DOS game that I remember playing as a child on my parents' computer, Jeopardy! And this is another one where I do find the interactions and the graphics to be fairly impressive for their time. Here's our famous Jeopardy theme song. Let's do one player. Whoops, I picked two. Oh well. And our computer is generating the third contestant, Glenn, who does not look like he's messing around. Oop, 200. Space Captain, who's now a hooker. Oh, that's a bad clue. This is one game where I can probably turn down the brightness a little bit as well. Chinese breed with a black tongue that might eat Purina dog food. I should probably know this. A chow. A chow. Okay. Now let's reset and take a look at one other classic one. And for our last game that we're going to take a quick look at, let's see how many people out there have the same nostalgic childhood memories I do of playing this in school, and may have been played on a green monochrome monitor in some cases. But it is the Oregon Trail version 2.1 by Mech. What is the first name of your wagon leader? Well, that's me, Seth. And the other members of our party. Now, if you were anything like me, you know this game will kill you off in a variety of ways. So, what would we do just to make those deaths a little more amusing? We might say something like, "Your mama has died of dysentery. Your daddy. Your face. And Joe." Are these names correct? Yes, sure. Because we are just so mature. Now keep in mind this is all loading from a floppy disk, so it is going to load a lot slower than it would from a hard drive. But I love how the graphics are rendered on this screen, even being in amber monochrome. Let's continue on the trail, and let's see how fast we can die. And our health is very poor. We may die before we even reach the river. Joe has typhoid. Sorry, Joe. Here's one of the classic bits about that. We have to cross the river in order to continue. Let's say I like these odds. Let's attempt to ford the river. And And let's see if we make it if we actually make it across, considering how badly prepared our party is for everything. And we have not made it. The river has too deep to ford. You lose 1 ox. Joe drowned, your daddy drowned, your mama drowned. Our party is not doing well at all. Oh, we are going to die so badly. You know what? Let's just attempt to ford it again and see what happens. I'm really not trying to succeed here, in case you couldn't tell. The river is too deep to ford. You lose 6 pounds of food and 1 ox. We have 118 miles to the next landmark. And your face has typhoid. Your face has died. Oh my gosh, I think almost all of our party is dead by now. Wait, did I just hear it say... It did say Seth has died. Okay, would you like to leave an epitaph? No. This is a game I might consider doing a long play on through this monitor at some point. If you'd be interested in that, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this brief look at the Compaq Desk Pro DSM monitor. Even if it does not display CGA graphics in the traditional 4 colors we might remember from back in the day, it does still put out the graphics and makes a lot of the games on that laptop infinitely more playable. This monitor, coupled with the Bondwell, makes for a great thrift store tech team. What are some of your own tech store thrift finds? I know they're out there waiting to be found. I'd love to hear about any of your finds in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.